Knowing without doing changes nothing. We live in a time where information is everywhere. You can search for anything in seconds, read entire books in hours, watch videos on any subject, and access more wisdom in a single day than entire generations had in their lifetimes. The world is full of knowledge, but knowledge, by itself, is just potential. It's like having seeds in your hand and never planting them. You can admire them, count them, compare them to someone else's seeds, even talk about what they could grow into, but until you plant them in the ground and take care of them, they remain what they are, seeds. People often mistake knowing for progress. They think, well, I've learned something new, so I must be moving forward. But that's an illusion. Learning is important, yes, but learning alone doesn't produce results. You can read 100 books on how to build muscle, but if you never step into a gym or do a push-up, your body will remain the same. You can watch endless videos about starting a business, but until you open your laptop, set up the plan, and begin making calls or building products, nothing will happen. There's a kind of comfort in staying in the knowing stage. When you're learning, there's no real risk. You can imagine yourself succeeding without facing the possibility of failure. You can stay in a safe place, where the idea still feels exciting and perfect, untouched by the real world. But the moment you move from knowing to doing, you expose yourself to reality, and reality is where challenges, mistakes, and setbacks live. Some people collect knowledge like trophies. They go from one seminar to another, from one course to another, from one book to another, and yet their lives never change. They can recite principles, they can quote the experts, they can explain in detail how to achieve a goal, but they haven't taken the first concrete step toward that goal themselves. It's not that they're incapable, it's that they've fallen into the trap of mistaking knowing for doing. Think of a map. A map can show you the entire route to your destination, every turn, every landmark, every possible obstacle. But the map won't get you there. You can study the map for weeks, memorize it completely, even redraw it from memory, but until you get in the car and start driving, you'll remain in the exact same place. The map's value is in guiding movement, not replacing it. Knowledge is the same. Another thing about knowing without doing is that it can create a false sense of satisfaction. You feel like you've accomplished something because you've learned something, but that feeling is temporary. Over time, if you don't take action, frustration builds. You start to feel stuck, even though you keep learning. You start to wonder why nothing is changing, and if you're not careful, you might even convince yourself that maybe success just isn't for you. But the truth is, it's not a lack of intelligence, talent, or opportunity that's holding you back, it's a lack of action. Action is the trigger for change. Without action, knowledge just sits in the mind unused, and eventually it fades. Skills not applied are skills lost. Ideas not executed are ideas wasted. Every day that passes without doing is a day that could have moved you closer to your dream, but didn't. And here's the painful part: knowing without doing is often worse than not knowing at all, because deep down, you can't escape the fact that you're aware of what you should be doing, but you're choosing not to. That gap creates guilt and regret. We often tell ourselves stories to justify the delay between knowing and doing. I need to research more. I'll start when I'm ready. I'm waiting for the perfect moment. But those are just excuses disguised as preparation. The truth is, you don't need to know everything before you begin. You don't need the perfect plan. You need enough clarity to take the first step, and then you learn the rest by moving forward. There's a saying, motion beats meditation. It means that thinking about doing something is never as valuable as actually doing it. You can adjust your course once you've started, but you can't reach your destination by standing still. Every great achievement you admire began with action. The people you look up to didn't wait until they had all the answers. They moved. They tried. They learned along the way. Another reason people stay in the knowing stage is fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of making mistakes. But doing something imperfectly is infinitely more valuable than doing nothing perfectly in your mind. The first draft will be messy. The first attempt might not work. But every step teaches you something you can't learn by reading or watching. There's knowledge you can only gain by doing, by experiencing, by engaging with the real world. Knowledge is the blueprint, but action is the construction. You can't live in a blueprint. You can't drive a blueprint down the road. You have to turn it into a building, into a car, into something tangible. And that process, the translation from thought to reality, only happens through doing. It's not enough to know that exercising daily will improve your health. You have to put on your shoes and get moving. It's not enough to know that budgeting will improve your finances. You have to sit down, look at your numbers, and make decisions. It's not enough to know that practicing a skill will make you better. You have to show up and practice. The bridge from knowing to doing isn't built by desire alone. It's built by commitment, by setting clear actions and following through on them, even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. The difference between those who dream and those who achieve is rarely knowledge. It's almost always action. Two people can have the same knowledge, the same resources, the same opportunities, and yet one will succeed while the other remains in the same place. Why? Because one person acts and the other doesn't. Knowledge prepares the mind, but only action changes the world around you. The gap between knowledge and action is where dreams die. There is a distance between what we know and what we do, and it's inside that distance that so many great ideas, ambitions, and hopes disappear. A person can have the most brilliant plan, the clearest vision of what they want, the perfect steps laid out in front of them, and yet nothing changes because those steps are never taken. It's not that they don't understand what needs to be done. It's that the doing never begins. And over time, that gap doesn't just hold their dreams, it swallows them whole. This gap is subtle. It's quiet. It doesn't announce itself like a brick wall you can see coming. It sneaks in slowly, disguised as harmless delays, disguised as preparation, disguised as I'll start tomorrow. At first it feels like a pause, but that pause grows longer. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and before you know it, the dream you once felt so alive about has faded into a memory of what could have been. Every dream starts in the mind. You picture it, you imagine the possibilities, you feel a rush of excitement. In that moment, it's real to you. The idea is fresh, the energy is high. But if you don't translate that excitement into immediate, decisive action, the energy starts to leak away. You lose the urgency, the details blur, doubt moves in, and eventually, that once bright dream gets stored on a shelf with all the others you told yourself you'd get to someday. The gap between knowing and doing exists because doing feels harder. Doing demands effort, courage, and discomfort. Knowing lets you stay safe inside your imagination, where nothing can go wrong. But here's the truth: in action is not neutral. While you're standing still, the world is moving forward. Opportunities pass by. Conditions change. The moment that was perfect for starting will never come back exactly the same way. And each time you choose not to act, you train yourself to hesitate, making the gap even wider the next time. Some people carry dreams for years, even decades, never realizing that the only thing standing between them and those dreams is action. They keep reading, thinking, and planning, hoping that one day they'll feel ready. But readiness is a myth. No one ever feels completely ready. The people who make things happen are the ones who take steps before they feel prepared, trusting that they'll figure it out along the way. This gap is also dangerous because it's deceptive. You can convince yourself you're making progress just because you're learning more. You can keep gathering information, attending workshops, talking to experts, and it feels like you're doing something. But you're not moving, you're standing in the same spot, building a bigger and bigger library in your mind, but never building anything in reality. The dream doesn't live in your head, it lives in the actions you take toward it. And it's not just big dreams that fall into this gap. Small daily actions fall there too. The exercise you know you should do, but skip. The conversation you know you should have, but avoid. The habit you know you should build, but put off until Monday. Every skipped step widens the gap just a little more, making it easier to skip again tomorrow. Over time, those small inactions compound into big regrets. The tragedy is that most dreams don't fail because they were impossible. They fail because they were never truly attempted. That's why the gap is so deadly, it kills dreams quietly, without you even realizing it's happening, until one day you look back and realize you've been carrying the same goals for years without making any real progress. Closing this gap requires a change in how you think about action. You can't wait for the perfect time, because the perfect time is now. You can't wait for full confidence, because confidence is built by doing. You can't wait until you have no fear, because fear only fades when you move through it. The dream will only survive if it escapes your mind and enters your life through tangible, consistent steps. There's a simple truth that separates those who achieve from those who only imagine. The achievers move. They don't live in the gap. They use knowledge as fuel for action, not as a place to hide. They know the gap is where dreams vanish, so they refuse to stand still in it. They treat every bit of knowledge as a call to do something, not just think about something. Most people underestimate how fragile a dream really is. A dream left unattended is like a fire without wood. It burns bright at first, but without fuel, it fades into smoke and disappears. The only fuel that keeps it alive is action, and without action, that dream doesn't just stay the same, it weakens until there's nothing left. The gap is the place where fires go out. This is why urgency matters. Urgency doesn't mean rushing blindly. It means understanding that every day you spend in the gap is a day your dream is in danger. The people who protect their dreams treat action as non-negotiable. They don't allow too much time to pass between an idea and the first step. They know the longer they wait, the harder it becomes. What's dangerous about this gap is how comfortable it feels in the moment. It's comfortable to think about doing something instead of actually doing it. It's comfortable to keep talking about your plans without risking the discomfort of starting. Comfort is warm in the short term, but it's cold in the long run when you realize comfort was the very thing that robbed you of your dreams. The truth is, the gap will always be there. Every time you learn something new, you'll face the choice: stay in the safety of knowing, or step into the uncertainty of doing. The ones who succeed make the step almost automatic. They don't linger in the gap long enough for fear or doubt to take root. They hear the call to act and they move, even if it's a small step, even if it's imperfect. The saddest stories aren't about people who tried and failed. They're about people who never tried at all. And in almost every one of those stories, the reason is the same: the dream never made it across the gap from knowing to doing. It stayed stuck in the mind until time ran out. Discipline is the bridge between knowing and doing. It's easy to get excited when you learn something new, when you get a fresh idea, or when you see the possibility of a better life. In that moment, it feels like the hard part is over. You understand what needs to be done, you feel motivated, and you can almost see yourself already living the result. But between that vision and its reality lies a stretch of work that requires one thing more than anything else: discipline. Without discipline, the idea stays in your mind and never makes its way into your actions. Without discipline, good intentions stay exactly that: intentions. Discipline is the quiet force that turns what you know into what you do. It's the commitment to act on your knowledge even when you don't feel like it, even when the excitement of the idea has faded, and even when no one is watching. Motivation is temporary. It rises when the idea is new, but it also fades when the work becomes repetitive or uncomfortable. Discipline, on the other hand, doesn't rely on feeling inspired. It's the ability to do what needs to be done because it needs to be done, regardless of how you feel in the moment. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but without discipline, it's like owning a car and never turning the key. The potential is there, the ability is there, but movement never happens. Discipline is the key that starts the engine. It's the repeated choice to show up, to follow through, to take one more step even when it would be easier to stop. Discipline demands consistency, and consistency is what transforms small, ordinary actions into extraordinary results over time. One workout won't make you strong. One day of saving won't make you wealthy. One day of study won't make you an expert. But doing it over and over, day after day, builds something that compounds into success. Knowledge tells you what to do. Discipline ensures you actually do it enough times for it to matter. Discipline often feels inconvenient in the short term. It means saying no to immediate comfort so you can say yes to a bigger reward later. It means choosing the salad when you'd rather have the dessert, reading the book when you'd rather watch the show, making the sales calls when you'd rather check your phone. It's rarely the easier choice in the moment, but it's always the choice that pays off in the long run. The reason discipline is the bridge is because there's always a gap between the moment you decide to do something and the moment you see the result. That gap can be weeks, months, or even years. Discipline is what carries you across when there's no immediate evidence that your effort is working. Without it, most people turn back long before they reach the reward. Discipline isn't about being perfect, it's about being committed. Even disciplined people make mistakes, miss days, or face setbacks. The difference is, they get back on track quickly. They don't let one missed step turn into a week or a month of lost progress. They have trained themselves to return to the work, no matter what happened yesterday. It's also important to understand that discipline is built, not born. No one starts with unshakable discipline. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes, and the way you build it is by starting small and keeping promises to yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, you strengthen your ability to follow through. Over time, the act of doing what you need to do, regardless of how you feel, becomes part of your identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who tries. You see yourself as someone who finishes. Discipline also protects you from distractions. The world is full of things competing for your attention, pulling you away from what matters most. Without discipline, it's easy to chase the next exciting thing and abandon the work you've already started. With discipline, you can keep your eyes on the goal and resist the temptation to wander. You understand that the results you want are on the other side of consistent, focused effort, not constant change. Another thing discipline does is turn temporary effort into lasting habit. At first, doing something new feels like a struggle because you have to push yourself. But if you do it often enough, it becomes part of your routine, and once it's part of your routine, it takes less mental effort to keep going. Discipline gets you through the hard beginning until momentum starts working in your favor. There will always be moments when you don't feel like doing the work. There will be mornings when the bed feels warmer than the workout, afternoons when the distractions feel easier than the business calls, evenings when the couch feels better than the book. Discipline is what overrides those feelings. It's the voice that says, do it anyway. It's the habit of honoring your commitments to yourself, even when no one else will know if you skipped. Discipline also requires clarity. You can't be disciplined about something you haven't clearly decided to do. If your goals are vague, your actions will be inconsistent. But when you know exactly what you're working toward and exactly what actions are required, discipline becomes the tool you use to close the gap between your current reality and your desired future. Many people think they lack motivation, but what they really lack is discipline. Motivation comes and goes, but discipline is steady. It doesn't depend on inspiration. It's built on decision and reinforced by repetition. Once you understand this, you stop waiting to feel ready and start focusing on being consistent. The bridge between knowing and doing isn't crossed in one leap. It's crossed step by step, and every step is a disciplined choice. It's waking up early when you'd rather sleep in, making the call when you'd rather avoid it, practicing when you'd rather relax, saving when you'd rather spend. Each of those choices might feel small in the moment, but together, they are the planks that form the bridge to your goal. Without discipline, knowledge slips through your fingers like water. You might hold onto it for a moment, but it doesn't stay. With discipline, knowledge becomes action, action becomes habit, and habit becomes a result you can see and touch. Fear and discomfort keep most people from starting. When a person has a dream, a plan, or even just an idea that excites them, there's often a moment when they hesitate before taking the first step. That hesitation usually isn't because they don't know what to do or because they lack the resources. It's because they feel fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of looking foolish, fear of what others might think. Alongside that fear is the awareness that doing something new will bring discomfort. It will stretch them, challenge them, and pull them out of what feels familiar and safe. The human mind is wired to avoid pain and uncertainty, and that instinct can be so strong that it stops people before they ever begin. Fear is persuasive. It speaks in a voice that sounds like reason. It says, "You're not ready yet." It says, "Wait until the timing is better." It says, "What if this doesn't work?" Fear creates a list of possible problems, magnifies every risk, and convinces you to focus on what could go wrong instead of what could go right. This is why so many people get stuck in preparation mode. They keep learning, researching, and thinking about their goal without ever moving toward it. Because in the back of their mind, fear is whispering that starting is too dangerous. Discomfort works in a different but equally powerful way. People like to stay where things feel easy and predictable. Starting something new threatens that comfort. It means doing things you've never done before, and that almost always feels awkward at first. If you've never spoken in front of a group, the first time will be uncomfortable. If you've never sold a product, the first few conversations will be uncomfortable. If you've never exercised regularly, the first few workouts will be uncomfortable. The problem is that many people interpret this discomfort as a signal to stop, when in reality, it's a sign of growth. Fear and discomfort feed each other. Fear makes you imagine the worst outcomes, and discomfort confirms that stepping into new territory doesn't feel good. Together, they create a powerful barrier to action. The mind starts to believe that the safest choice is to stay where you are, even if staying means giving up on the dream. This is how people end up spending years in the same place, telling themselves they'll start someday, but never actually taking the leap. The most frustrating part is that fear often exaggerates reality. The thing you're afraid of is almost never as bad as you imagine. People fear rejection, but when they finally ask for something and get turned down, they realize it's not the end of the world. They fear making mistakes, but when they make one, they realize they can correct it and keep moving. They fear failure, but when it happens, they see that it's not final and can even lead to better opportunities. The imagined pain is often far worse than the actual experience. Discomfort, too, changes with exposure. The first time you do something difficult, it feels strange. The second time, it's still challenging but slightly more familiar. Over time, what once felt unbearable becomes manageable, and what was once uncomfortable becomes routine. But you can only reach that point if you start and keep going long enough to adapt. This is why those who push through the early stages of discomfort often succeed where others quit. They learn to tolerate the feeling long enough for it to fade. One of the most common fears is the fear of not being good enough. People hesitate because they don't want to embarrass themselves by doing something poorly. But the truth is, everyone is bad at the beginning. No one gives their best performance the first time they try something new. Excellence is built through repetition, and repetition can only happen after you start. Avoiding the start guarantees you'll never get better. Another fear is the fear of judgment. People worry about what friends, family, or strangers will think if they fail. This fear is especially powerful because it taps into the deep human desire to be accepted. But the reality is that most people are too focused on their own lives to think about yours for long. The ones who matter will respect you for trying, and the ones who mock you were never worth impressing in the first place. There's also the fear of change itself. Even when someone's current situation isn't ideal, it's familiar, and familiarity feels safe. Change, even positive change, comes with uncertainty, and uncertainty triggers the instinct to stay where you are. But every dream, every improvement, every breakthrough exists on the other side of that change. Without stepping into it, you remain locked in the same patterns, repeating the same results. The truth is, fear never fully disappears before you start. Waiting until you feel no fear is a strategy for never beginning. The people who achieve their goals aren't fearless. They're willing to act while afraid. They understand that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward in spite of it. And the same is true for discomfort. It doesn't vanish before you take the first step, but it does shrink once you've taken it repeatedly. Fear and discomfort are like shadows. They seem largest when you're standing still, staring at them. Once you start moving, they begin to shrink. The moment you take the first action, you realize the shadow is not as solid as it looked, and every step after that makes it smaller. But as long as you avoid starting, the shadow grows until it feels impossible to cross. Many dreams have died without ever being attempted, not because they were unrealistic or unachievable, but because the person carrying them let fear and discomfort decide their actions. They convinced themselves the timing wasn't right, that they needed to learn more first, that they should wait until they felt ready. They mistook the natural discomfort of growth for a sign that they weren't capable. And in doing so, they left their dreams untouched, imagining what could have been while never taking the first step to see. Action taken today beats perfect action postponed. There's a common trap that stops people from ever starting on their goals. It's the belief that everything has to be lined up perfectly before they can take action. They wait for the perfect plan, the perfect timing, the perfect resources, or the perfect conditions. They tell themselves they'll begin when they feel fully ready, when there's no risk of mistakes, when they can do it flawlessly from the very first step. But perfect never arrives. While they wait for that ideal moment, time slips away, opportunities pass by, and their dream stays exactly where it started in their mind. Action, even if it's small, even if it's messy, creates momentum. The first step might not be perfect, but it gets you moving. Once you're in motion, you can adjust, improve, and refine. You can't steer a parked car, but once it's rolling, even slowly, you can change direction. Waiting for perfection before acting is like refusing to leave your driveway until every traffic light on your route turns green. You'll never get anywhere. The reality is, no matter how much you prepare, the first version of anything you do will be imperfect. Your first workout won't be your best. Your first sales call won't be smooth. Your first draft won't be publish-ready. But none of that matters as much as getting started, because starting teaches you things you could never learn from thinking alone. Action gives you feedback. It shows you what works, what doesn't, and what needs to change. Perfection is built through the process of doing, not before it. Every day you delay taking action is a day lost. Time is the one resource you can never get back, and the longer you wait, the more difficult it becomes to begin. Momentum works both ways. Starting creates forward motion, but delaying creates a habit of postponing. The more you practice waiting, the easier it becomes to keep waiting. Eventually, the habit of hesitation becomes so ingrained that you don't even notice you're doing it. The truth is, the conditions will never be perfect. There will always be some uncertainty, some missing piece, some reason you could use to justify waiting. But action is what creates the conditions you're waiting for. You want clarity, start, and clarity will come from doing. You want confidence, start, and confidence will grow from experience. You want opportunity, start, and opportunities will appear along the way. The act of moving forward creates the very things you think you need before you can move. Many people overestimate the cost of acting imperfectly and underestimate the cost of not acting at all. Making a mistake might slow you down for a day or a week, but not starting can cost you years. The price of inaction is invisible at first, but over time it becomes heavy. You start to realize that months have passed with no real progress, that your dream hasn't moved an inch because you've been waiting for the right moment. By then, the regret begins to outweigh the fear of starting. Action also builds resilience. When you start before you feel ready, you're forced to adapt. You learn how to figure things out as you go, how to handle challenges in real time, how to keep moving even when the plan changes. This adaptability becomes one of your greatest strengths because it means you're not dependent on perfect circumstances. You can work with whatever you have wherever you are. It's important to understand that perfection is not a starting point. It's the result of repeated effort. Think about a master musician. They didn't wait until they could play flawlessly before picking up an instrument. They started with wrong notes, awkward fingers, and missed beats. Over time, through consistent practice, they improved. The same applies to business, relationships, health, and personal growth. Every expert you admire once stood exactly where you are now at the beginning, unsure, imperfect, but willing to act. Action today also sends a message to yourself that you take your goals seriously. It builds trust in your own word. When you tell yourself you're going to do something and then follow through immediately, you reinforce the belief that you are a person who acts, not just dreams. This self-trust compounds over time, making it easier to take the next action and the one after that. Starting now also allows you to take advantage of compound effort. Just like compound interest in finance, small consistent actions grow into significant results over time. Every day you act, even in a small way, you're adding to the total. Waiting until things are perfect means you're missing out on all the growth you could have been building in the meantime. Perfectionists often miss this truth. Action taken today can be improved tomorrow, but inaction today leaves nothing to improve. You can edit a rough draft, but you can't edit a blank page. You can refine a product that exists, but you can't refine an idea that never left your head. You can adjust a plan in motion, but you can't adjust a plan that hasn't begun. The fear of starting imperfectly is often tied to the fear of judgment. People worry about how they'll look to others if they stumble in the beginning, but those who achieve great things are rarely the ones who looked perfect at the start. They're the ones who were willing to look awkward, inexperienced, and even foolish if it meant making progress. The critics are always louder in your mind than in reality, and even when people do criticize, their opinions have no power to stop you unless you give it to them. Taking action today also creates a sense of urgency. It breaks the habit of postponement and forces you to work with what you have instead of waiting for what you wish you had. Urgency doesn't mean recklessness, it means recognizing that time is precious and acting accordingly. It's the opposite of letting days drift by while you wait for everything to line up just right. What often surprises people is how much they can accomplish once they actually begin. The task they've been putting off for weeks often takes far less time and energy than they imagined. The conversation they've been dreading often goes better than expected. The step they thought was too difficult often turns out to be manageable. Most of the barriers were mental, and they dissolve as soon as you start moving. Every big accomplishment is made up of a series of small, imperfect actions taken consistently over time. You don't have to see the whole path before you take the first step. You just have to take the first step, then the next, and let the path reveal itself as you go. The progress you make by starting now, even with flaws, will always be greater than the progress you make by waiting for flawless conditions that never come.